Welcome to Go a Little Mad, a horror movie podcast. My name is Jason, and I love scary movies.
I'm Brianna, and I don't. And this week we watched Dead Silence.
You get it?
I was forced to do the silence, but I get it, yeah.
Yeah. Good movie. I've seen it probably, this is like my fourth time seeing it.
Wow, okay.
And that's probably more than anybody has ever seen this movie, because I said it was a good movie, but I lied.
When I posted about it, multiple people said, this is a good movie, this is one of my favorites, so people like it.
Oh, I like it. It's not a good movie. So I have a theory on this movie that as we were preparing for this episode, I kind of went back and forth on if I was going to lay out this theory up top or throw it in with my scores. But I think it's just so good, I can't wait to share it with you.
Okay, let's hear it.
This movie is the horror equivalent of a Hallmark Christmas movie.
This actually coincides exactly with what I'm going to say right now.
Right, but it's like, it's predictable, it's cut and dry,
Yeah.
You know what you're getting, and if you're a fan of the genre and you're just going in, I'm sorry, genre, R.I.P. Alex Trebek, if you're a fan of the genre and you're going into it, you know what to expect, and you just kind of turn your brain off, you have a good time and feel good, because this is what we do. Like, this is what we watch horror movies for.
Yes.
And I feel like this is that movie where it's not a good movie. Like, the writing is questionable, the acting is questionable, everything about this movie is just not that good, but it's just fun if you know, it's fun if you're into that.
There's a name for it that I'm coining right now.
So there's not a name for it. You're making a name for it.
I'm making a name for it, although I think I just thought of a better name, so I'm going to say first what I thought, which is that this is called harmless horror. But what I think might be better is Hallmark horror.
Yeah, Hallmark's way better.
Yeah, well, I didn't know your Hallmark theory until now.
Yeah.
But that's
You're welcome.
what I said here. This is okay for people who are typically too afraid to watch horror. While I still jumped, you knew the jump scenes were coming, you know, just like you know what's going to happen in a Hallmark movie.
Did you write, you know what's going to happen in a Hallmark movie?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I was going to say, that'd be crazy.
No, I know.
We're a very good team.
So there's like not a lot of stress there. The central issue is, you know, to a specific group of people. So it's not going to happen to me. This is fine. Not heavy, just fun and harmless. Hallmark horror.
Well, I will say, he didn't think it was going to happen to him either. So maybe we should, like, ask your parents if they ever, like, murdered somebody.
Well, my parents.
Right.
Yeah, that's,
But your parents would know. They'd be the people to ask, is what I mean.
maybe if their parents told them and their parents told them, yada, yada, yada.
Let me ask you, do you have any mysterious deaths back in your family of people getting their tongues ripped
don't
out?
talk to me about this. I just said it's harmless horror, so we're going to keep it there.
I thought we were going with Hallmark horror.
Same.
Okay. I'm sorry, I've completely derailed us.
To wrap up my initial thoughts, this is, to quote Danny Pellegrino from the Everything Iconic podcast, this is 5 stars and 1 star.
Yeah.
It is good and it is terrible.
I've never listened to Danny Pellegrino, but sounds like they know what they're talking about.
You have in a way.
Yes. Well, yes, I've heard Danny through you constantly.
Yes.
All the time. Because that's the podcast you listen to in the morning, and it has that sound like, or what is it?
He has a soundboard with many sounds.
But there's the one he plays that's like a scary sound.
Yes.
And I hear it all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's not the sound that I just made. The sound I made was Sports Center.
And this is great for the listeners who haven't heard Danny Pellegrino, so they have no idea what we're talking about.
I'm so sorry. I've completely ruined the intro to this episode. I promise, guys, this is way more fun than the movie, though.
Okay, well, the movie credits. So this was written by Lee Wannell, directed by James Wan, starring Ryan Quanten as Jamie Ashen, although I'm pretty sure we never hear his last name until we discover what's being discovered.
No, Donnie Wahlberg, whose name you, like, never hear, by the way.
Never.
Yeah, but he calls him Mr. Ashen. And then, like, later on, when he's looking through the book and he discovers that boy is his relative, you see the last name Ashen there. And that's how you're supposed to piece those two. Yeah, and I'm supposed to
remember that the one time Donnie called him Ashen, didn't put that together.
I did.
Well, you've seen it 4 times.
I put it together the first time, Brianna.
Donnie Wahlberg was paid extra to say the name Jamie. That's how many times he said it. I can only assume he was paid extra. Never heard him say the last name.
Donnie Wahlberg was the best part of this movie.
And the worst.
I don't want to get ahead of it.
No.
But yeah.
Okay, so Amber Valletta as Ella Ashen, Donnie Wahlberg as Detective Lipton. However, I will not be calling him that because they never do. His name is Donnie, and he will be Donnie. And Michael Fairman as Henry Walker.
Lee and James were the team behind Saw, which they had made before this. And I also think this was actually made before Saw became like the all-consuming Halloween franchise, like every year releasing a new one terribly. So they still had some cred at this point. No, I'm kidding. They also went on to, one of them did The Conjuring. They've actually had great careers. Mr. Ashen, Jamie's dad, was played by, I don't have his name here in front of me. I'm surprised that you don't.
I didn't care to put him in.
It's a very limited role. He's only in a couple of scenes. But he is forever, to me, the warden from Shawshank Redemption. And he nails it. He absolutely nails it. The first scene he's in, there's a reveal towards the end of the movie, and watching that scene, knowing the reveal, really left an impression on me. But as we'll talk about, that's the problem with this movie, is that scene is really good the second time, but if you don't know the twist, the first time it comes off as terrible acting.
Yes.
But it's really good. He did great. I love Shawshank Redemption. Brianna won't watch it with me. She said she just feels like she's going to be bored the whole time. We had this conversation.
A long movie. I feel like it's boring. It's so old. It's okay that I missed it. It's okay. It can miss me.
It's not even that old.
It is, though.
It's younger than you.
Okay. It's still old, as am I.
Okay.
And you only said that to make me say that I'm old. So.
No, I said that hoping you would backtrack.
So the summary is, a package arrives for Jamie, and upon opening it, he and his wife, Lisa, find a dummy doll. In a matter of hours, Jamie's life is torn apart by the mysterious murder of his wife. Knowing his hometown's history with ventriloquist dolls, he returns home, hoping to bring his wife's murderer to justice, but ends up uncovering something much more jaw-dropping.
Jaw-dropping?
Get it?
Did you come up with that?
Yes,
You're so clever.
I know. What do you have for the Rotten Tomato score?
20% for critics.
That's abysmal.
51% for the audience.
That's like really harsh, though. The 20%.
That is hard. This is, yeah, but again.
Like, relax.
Again, though, we need to remember 20% is not like 20 out of 100. It's just 20% of critics would recommend it.
Yeah.
So, I think the 51% is more emblematic of it. Like, this is just a movie that if you go into it with the right expectations, you'll enjoy it. But if you're expecting a good movie, you're not going to enjoy it.
I have a question about Rotten Tomatoes. Does does it close? Can you stop voting on a movie?
So no, actually, I believe it was Citizen Kane. I want to look this up. I was just reading about this a few weeks ago. There was a movie that had a 100% fresh rating, and like 70 years later, some asshole posted a negative review of it, and it ruined the 100%. But I think actually the movie I'm thinking about, maybe it was Citizen Kane, they unearthed an old review that was critical of it. So that one, I guess, still counts. But no, I don't think there is a limit.
So
I could be wrong.
go in right now and like vote on Dead Silence.
Oh, yeah. So last podcast on the left, they had a stretch where they talked about an 80s movie with Dan Aykroyd called Nothing But Trouble, which was terrible movie. And they observed that after they gave it a bit of a bump, it had a lot more viewers, and the score went down. Oh. The movie came out in the 80s. So we could definitely do that with Dead Silence if you're really passionate about it.
No, I just was curious.
Okay, good, because
I don't ever care to. Yeah.
Okay.
And what'd you find for Flesh Wounds?
We've got a few things here. Towards the end of the movie, Jamie and Detective Lipton are in a theater where much of the movie takes place, and all of Mary's dolls are on display in these like cases along the walls. And among them, you can see a few famous dolls. So there are a couple very famous ventriloquist dummies. Charlie McCarthy, whose ventriloquist was Edgar Bergen, and Danny O'Day, who's belonged to Jimmy Nelson.
So the dummy was Danny O'Day?
Yes, the dummy was Danny O'Day and Charlie McCarthy. The ventriloquists, who are not shown in the movie, obviously, because they're people, were Edgar Bergen and Jimmy Nelson.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then there's also a little jigsaw doll, the little doll face from Saw that everybody associates with Saw. Mm-hmm. Saw, there was a jigsaw doll that you saw in there, which was obviously an intentional nod from Lee and James.
Cute.
Getting back to the quality of the movie, low. Lee Whannell was so unhappy with how this movie came out. He said it was due to studio interference. He said that they kept, kind of interfering with the things he wanted to do. He decided from here on out, after he made this movie, he was just going to write spec scripts as opposed to pitching an idea to a studio and then writing the screenplay. which for those of you, we talked about it in one of our early episodes. A spec script is basically when you write an entire script and then try to shop it around, as opposed to pitching an idea and then they buy the rights and then you write the script. Obviously, if you have a whole script first, it's much easier to keep control of your product or project rather. But yeah, this movie was so bad, it completely changed the way Lee Wanell approaches his career.
I read that he was essentially forced to write it because of Saw, either because of the success of Saw or because of like the potential for Saw not to be a success. The studio like made them say you have to have like a backup that we can just put right out there. And so he essentially just like locked himself in a room and came up with this idea. And I feel like there's a lot that you can see that someone just almost came up with this in like 24 hours kind of thing. And then the studio got involved with the movie itself and like forced all of those kinds of like exposition scenes that we see. Like anything to explain and push things forward, I guess. I don't know. He wrote a blog post about it that's like non-existent now, except for the fact that you can't really take anything away from the internet. And he hated it. He's not happy with it. But he also kind of like came around and was like, but it was a lesson, so I actually love it.
The thing is, though, like, this isn't a good movie, but I wouldn't say this is, like, career-ending bad.
Obviously not. He went on to do things.
Well, no, but what I mean is, like, I don't think this movie is so bad that it would make me, like, question the way I do business. You know what I mean?
But I think as a writer, he's just the creative person behind it and takes ownership of it and feels like he put out a shitty product and he's the writer. So I get that.
Yeah. So Dead Silence was also the working title of the movie Tremors from 1990. Are you familiar with that movie?
Of course not.
It's like a sci-fi-ish, like kind of horror-y movie where there are giant worms under the ground that will, come up from the ground and eat people. And it's called Dead Silence, or at least the working title is Dead Silence because you want to be silent, when, so the worms don't feel or hear your vibrations.
Like Dune.
Yeah, exactly like Dune. Yeah. Tremors was a better movie than this, and it's actually maybe something we should think about covering sometime. It could be a fun movie. But yeah, I just thought that was fun because that's a good title for Tremors. The DVD version of the movie includes an alternate beginning and an alternate ending. So the alternate beginning, the way the movie begins currently, obviously we'll get to it more in detail in just a few moments, but, it's just a guy and a girl in their apartment, mysterious doll shows up at the door, scary things ensue. In the original, an unidentified woman is tucking her son into bed, and she tells him a bedtime story, which turns out to be the story of Mary Shaw, which is the main ghost woman in this movie. Terrible, terrible poem.
Yeah.
Terrible poem to tell her story. And she warns him that should he ever encounter Mary Shaw, he should be sure to never scream. The only thing that can protect him is silence. And with that, she blows out a candle, and the beginning credits start. I'm guessing they cut it because, the poem was fucking terrible.
Well, because that's...
Which I will talk about a lot. Every time the poem is mentioned in the movie, I'm going to have something to say about it because it is infuriating. Playing real fast and loose with the term poem there.
I like the poem.
The poem is terrible.
Why?
It doesn't have rhythm. It's like something R.M. Drake wrote. It's garbage. I'm sorry if R.M. Drake is a regular listener of this podcast, but it's garbage.
So harsh.
Okay, here it is. Let's just give it to the listeners.
Okay.
Right up top. Beware the stare of Mary Shaw. She has no children, only dolls. If you see her in your dreams, be sure you never ever scream.
I mean, there's rhyming. I feel the rhythm.
Shaw and dolls?
No, beware the stare. That's the rhyming.
Those first two sentences are just so clumsy. Beware the stare of Mary Shaw. She has no children, only dolls. Doesn't that sound like wrong to you? Like, don't you feel like that should sound different?
Yeah. I hear what you mean.
I mean, we can agree to disagree. I'm not going to judge you if you still like it.
It's not like I just stan the poem. I see the flaws.
She just lifted up her sweatshirt to reveal a t-shirt with the poem printed on it.
Available in our TeePublic site now. Just kidding.
I'm pretty sure that's illegal.
Well, I bet Lee doesn't care because he hates this movie.
Fair.
Are those your plus ones?
Yep.
Okay. And touch points.
You go first.
Well, I just don't have any. I think I vaguely remember this coming out, like I've said for every modern movie we've watched. And I definitely was afraid. And this movie in particular has shown me how powerful trailers are, because the trailer, which I just saw it because we have a TikTok, everyone, and you should follow our TikTok at Go a Little Mad Pod. I review trailers before we watch the movie. And yeah, it seems like it's going to be like a really scary movie, and it's not. So what's your touch point?
I saw this in the theater. I saw it at the Plainville Lowe's with Mallory. It's my favorite movie theater when I was younger. It's sort of like, when you think about like going to the movies when you were younger and how like magical it was, like that's the theater I go to in my head. We liked it. I mean, we walked up there being like, we didn't go into it with super high expectations. I didn't think it was going to be, the next Halloween or something. It was just like, oh, this will be fun. And it was super fun. We really enjoyed it. And I've watched it at least once, I think twice since. Every once in a while, I just kind of go on like a binge with old horror movies that I've watched, and I'll just kind of have a few on while I'm playing a game or something and just kind of pay half attention. And I definitely did that with this last year. Yeah, it's a fun movie. I like it's not a good movie, but I enjoy this movie, and I have nothing but good memories associated with it.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about the movie.
Yeah.
After an old school Universal logo to really set the tone.
It's from their silent films.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
We see a definition of ventriloquist, essentially. It says in the 6th century BC, when it was believed that spirits of the dead speak through the stomachs of the living, the word comes from Latin, venter for belly, and loqui, meaning to speak.
Sure, either one.
So like belly speak. Before we even started the movie, I knew I wanted to do a deep dive on the origins of ventriloquism. According to Britannica, so it's legit, it has ancient origins. Traces of it have been found in Egyptian and Hebrew archaeology. These are hard names. These are like Greek hard names. Archiles of Athens was the most celebrated of Greek ventriloquists. And they were actually called Euryclides, named after him. Or also Angastromantes, meaning belly prophets. You can Google it and figure out how to say it.
Belly prophet was my nickname in college.
That is such a funny phrase. Like, you're a belly prophet. Ventriloquism is defined as the art of throwing voice, such as speaking in such a manner that the sound seems to come from a distance or from a source other than the speaker. At the same time, the voice is disguised partly by its heightened pitch, adding to the effect.
I will say, like, ventriloquists get kind of a bad rap. It's sort of seen as like kind of the lowest form of entertainment for a lot of like, but
why?
Well,
it's
and
so hard.
It's very difficult, and when it's done right, it's incredibly impressive. And that's what I was gonna say. Is it's just very difficult.
This definition, I feel like, is taken very literally in the movie, and knowing this definition, it's kind of key to what happens in the movie, because I don't think of ventriloquism as throwing voice or like voices from a distance. It's this person with a dummy, and they're just speaking through their mouth being closed. So they really took that definition and was like, what can we do with the definition of ventriloquism? At least that's what I'm thinking, because that's what it seems like. The process is words are formed in a normal manner, but the breath escapes slowly, the tones being muffled by the glottis and the mouth being opened as little as possible while the tongue is retracted and only its tip moves. Glottis. This pressure on the vocal cords diffuses the sound. The greater the pressure, the greater the illusion of distance. And kind of like what you were saying, this sounds difficult and impossible. Like, how is this real?
Oh, it's very difficult. I have like one of my core childhood memories is an episode of Doug where Doug decides to take up ventriloquism. And
I don't remember this.
He reads something in a book that says like you're supposed to switch your D's and B's. And I don't know why. So it's just him practicing over and over again. The Dasket doll.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's just one of those things that's burned into my brain forever. Instead of like important information.
You know why? Because I think we all took that and tried to do it.
Yeah, probably.
That's why it's in our brains.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
That's like Jeff Dunham's origin story.
So other than in media, though, have you ever seen a ventriloquist?
I've seen Jeff Dunham live.
Oh, I didn't know he was a ventrilo. Oh yeah, he has the dummies. I don't like
That's
prop.
all he does.
I don't like prop comedy.
No, that's all he does is like puppets. And I saw him, you know, in that like few year period where he was like, everybody loved him for some reason.
Yeah.
And like, it's funny because like I am not throwing any shade at anybody that's a professional performer. It's very difficult. I don't envy it. But I look back on that and I don't know why I enjoyed him back then. Like I watch the stuff now and it's not even a little funny to me. So I'm Spanish on my mother's side, and that, you know, kind of thing that would be problematic now, he had this guy called Jose Jalapeno on a stick,
Yeah.
and he did this very stereotypical accent for it. And again, like 10 years later, that's kind of a problem for his career. But that pepper looked just like my Spanish grandfather. And that's what I remember Jeff Dunham for. They have identical faces. I'll get you a picture of them. You can put them side by side on the Instagram. It's insane.
Gosh. Well, the opening credits include creepy music, box music, and someone is going through like old photo albums and diagrams, and then they're drawing. And I feel like this is key for understanding the ending, but without knowing that, you're just watching this like really confused. At least I was.
Yeah. The music is like overly dramatic.
Yeah.
This movie, one of the reasons I enjoy it is because it doesn't take itself too seriously, but the soundtrack takes itself too seriously.
Yeah.
And it's also very long. It's a very long credit sequence.
Extremely long. It eventually transitions into...
And after it ends, I checked the time. We were only like 3.5 minutes in.
Yeah.
It just felt incredibly long because there's like nothing going on.
No. And you're confused. So it does kind of transition though into them like they are creating a doll. So we see a ventriloquist doll face, but no eyes, which was very creepy. And then once it's created, we kind of zoom in on the eye all the way in until it transitions to like the inside of pipes, and we get to modern day Jamie and his wife. He's working on the pipes. They have a wonderful relationship, and you can tell because it's super playful and flirty.
Now, did you immediately recognize Jamie when you saw him?
No, someone had to tell me that he's from True Blood.
Yeah, it's Jason Stackhouse.
I knew I recognized him. I was like, he's like I don't know why I know him, but
he's much more bumbling in True Blood. Like this character is kind of a take charge kind of guy. He is like on a mission, whereas in True Blood he's just kind of like
not.
Yeah.
He says that he'll be finished soon, and she's like, "Oh, you said that an hour ago. Let's just get takeout. Let's give up on this." During this, the camera kind of cuts over to their apartment door, and we see that someone has walked by the apartment, and then their playful banter is interrupted by the doorbell. They open the door and find a large box. It's obviously the doll. That's just exactly what I knew was happening right away.
Right.
We
knew
really
that,
cut
but
to the chase.
They would have no context for thinking it was the doll. Yeah.
Yeah. So they open it up, and they do not have an appropriate reaction to what they're opening. Now, this did not come from anyone. This is just a mysterious package with his name on it. Lisa's like, "Oh, Jamie, you adopted us a doll." He at least acknowledges that it's weird that a doll appeared, but again, inappropriate reactions. Not scared. Not scared enough.
Well, I mean, in this world, there's no reason to think this is murderous yet. Right.
He should immediately be thinking that, which is a constant hole in this entire movie. He should immediately be like, "Oh, fuck.
Well,
wrap this up."
Not at the beginning, though. Like, that could just be a prank. One of your friends sends you something silly as a prank. Guys do that all the time.
Unfriending. She picks it up and plays with it. And like offhandedly, this is so stupid. She's just like, "Oh, there's this story about this old woman who had no kids, only dolls, and like she killed everyone." Like she just says this old story. I feel like it doesn't even make sense that she would know that, because based on what we learned, it feels like the story of Mary Shaw is very concentrated to the town that he grew up in and not broadcasted out, but whatever. She props it up on the couch and they just stare at it, and then its mouth just drops open on its own. Return to sender. He's shrugging. He's shrugging.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's nothing here that is inherently spooky yet.
He goes to pick up the takeout. Meanwhile, she puts on the kettle and then goes into their bedroom to prop up the doll, telling it If you get Jamie to scream, I'll give you 7 minutes in heaven with Barbie. She goes into the closet and there's ghostly breathing. That's what why do I forget the name?
Subtitles?
The subtitles. That's what the subtitles tell us. She turns around and finds that the doll's head is now facing her, even though that's not how she propped it up.
That was two things. One, it was very predictable.
Yes.
Like it was the kind of shot where like you see it and then you see her get in front of it and you know that when she moves aside, something will be behind her, you know? But two, it was still done pretty well.
Yeah.
I feel like it still gave you a little bit of a jump.
Yeah, no, I hated it.
And it was a good scene. Yeah. Good scare.
She grabs a pillow from the closet. She's using that to like further prop him up. And then she covers it with the sheet. So it looks like a ghost or child is like sitting up in the bed. Before she leaves the room, she kind of like checks herself out in the mirror and then she stuffs a pillow under her shirt to look at how she might look if she was pregnant, basically.
Because she's pregnant.
Spoiler. There's music playing in the background and it kind of starts to skip or get distorted. So she thinks that Jamie is home, but he's not. Then the music goes all the way off. There's a clock ticking that stops ticking. The kettle is whistling, but that kind of fades off too in this weird, distorted way. And that's when she starts finally getting a little like, something's weird here.
Yeah. And as we're watching this scene, I have like kind of like a moment where I realize that she looks exactly like this actress from another scary movie a few years earlier than this one called They, which I don't remember much about, but I remember seeing in the theater and I remember just being like, yeah, that was fine, whatever. Turns out it's the same actress.
Oh, that makes sense. I looked it up after.
Then. Yeah. And she hasn't been in much else that I have seen. But I just thought that was interesting. She's just in these two random scary movies a couple years apart.
There's a child laughing and she approaches the doll. Not a single light being turned on, by the way, except for the lightning happening outside to set the mood.
You see the pot that she put on the stove is blowing out steam, but there's no noise.
Right. So like the sounds are still happening, but
she
can't hear them.
Dead silent.
You might say. She slowly approaches the bed, and as she reaches out to rip off the sheet instead is tossed on her, and she's like stabbed. There's like stabbing noises. She gets tossed, and then she's like coughing up blood. She turns to look behind her, and she says, "No, no," and then she gets pulled back into the room, and we just see her screaming toward the camera. Jamie comes home to find the kettle whistling and the music on. So like we said, it didn't actually stop playing. The kettle's been whistling so long that it's hot to the touch. And he calls repeatedly for Lisa, and she doesn't answer until she says, "I'm in here."
But it sounds different.
It
like
does.
From what we've heard of her, like it is her voice, but it's lighter, it is airier.
Yeah.
And like if you talk to me like that from another room, that would be a major red flag for me.
Good to know.
Jamie just plows right ahead.
Yeah, well, he's thinking, oh, we're going to eat dinner in bed again. Nice. Like, that's what he's all excited for. And on his way to the bedroom, he slips. And I don't know if he sees that there's blood on the floor or not, because, again, no one's turning lights on here. But he is getting alarmed. He's like, what's going on? And so he calls her name again, and she says, "Yes, Jamie, I have a surprise for you, Jamie." But now her voice is changing even more. Like, it's definitely not right. He goes into the bedroom, turns on the light. There's like this spot of light red on the sheet. It looks like it was set up still like the dummy. So it's set up in the same way that she left the dummy, except for that little spot of red. There's laughter. He approaches slowly, and then he yanks the sheet off to find her dead body. And her mouth is like gaping open. There's blood everywhere. Her hands are all bent and weird. Basically she's set up like a mannequin.
And her tongue is ripped out.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know that until they said her tongue was ripped out.
Yeah, everyone's tongue is ripped out.
Yeah, but that's not ever made clear that that's what she's doing, really. It's just like a throwaway line from Donnie Wahlberg. This is how they use the voice throughout the movie with like every kill, basically. Kind of going back to the definition of ventriloquism, like throwing voice through the distance, using another voice, but she's just literally taking their voice, and that's what gets people to come. There's like a montage of the coroner coming and him crying as they take away her body, and then he's at the police station. That's when we meet Donnie and Blondie. Now, I named her Blondie thinking we'd see her a lot. We never see her again. She's just here for this quick scene.
Yeah, I don't even know who you're talking about.
It's just the other cop girl.
I didn't even know there was another cop in the room, to be honest with you.
They're talking about Jamie and the case, and she thinks quote, only someone high as a kite would kill his wife and pose her like a mannequin. And I just feel like that's a cop who's not keeping up on the times and like not paying attention to true crime or anything like that. Which I guess 2007 true crime wasn't as big of a thing.
No.
But this is not unique. Come on. Have you followed a serial killer before?
I mean, I'm gonna take her side on this one. I feel like not everybody's capable of doing that.
Donnie walks in playing like tough guy kind of.
He's shaving.
Well, yeah, which
he
he's
does
compulsively doing throughout the entire
every
film.
scene. He's just got this electric shaver, and he's running it under his chin as he talks, tough guy.
This, I want to know, was this a Donnie Wahlberg choice, or like did the character need to be doing that? I need to know.
And that brings me to my thought. Donnie Wahlberg, he tries in this movie. He is not phoning it in. Like, you would forgive anybody for just showing up in a movie like this and just showing up to work and like, whatever, I don't care, this is my job. He puts a lot of effort into this.
I put this in somewhere later, but what is happening here? Because I think both the director and writer didn't give a shit about what was happening. This is first take. Every single scene we see is a first take. And like, yeah, you're going to try real hard. Donnie's trying real hard. But is the first take usually going to be the best take? No, that's why they do multiple takes. You know, you got to give it a couple takes and you get more into the character and more into the feel of how things go. But we never got that opportunity. Everything is just first take.
So let me ask you, where in the hierarchy of New Kids on the Block is Donnie?
Donnie is the hottest.
What?
Yeah.
Donnie is the hottest.
Okay, so I'm not a New Kids person. I'm a Backstreet person. And that's just my age, really. But they did NKOTBSB for a few years. And that's when I discovered Donnie Wahlberg. And he's like Kevin Richardson from the Backstreet Boys, getting better with age. Now, is he down several notches because of who he chose to marry? Absolutely. But he's still the hottest.
I am flabbergasted. This is like saying your favorite Backstreet Boy is Howie.
No, it is
like,
not.
This is absolutely, it is.
No, the Howie of New Kids is the one whose name I don't even know. That's the Howie of New Kids.
Okay, I'm just saying, Donnie's not the Nick either.
No, I know that Joey is supposed to be the Nick because he's also the youngest, I think. And Jordan is like the Brian, but Donnie's the AJ. And you know what? AJ's also hot. Okay?
Okay, I mean,
Where are my Donnie heads at?
I would not even give Donnie the AJ. Look, I love Donnie Wahlberg. Don't get me wrong.
Have you ever seen him shirtless?
Yes.
It's great.
I just, the words Donnie Wahlberg sex symbol have never like been next to each other in my brain. I'm blown away.
Well, anyway, more about Donnie. So he thinks this is going to be like an open and shut case, basically. He walks in saying that it was stupid or it was a lazy attempt at an alibi for Jamie to have picked up roses. Like, there were roses at the house.
Yeah, he's like, find a nickel for every time a guy picked up a rose before he killed his wife.
Yeah.
I'd be rich, my friend.
And he's like, why would I need an alibi? And Donnie says something about how, like, your lawyer is going to need the alibi. And, like, you're not a cop if you're talking about the lawyer. This guy's not even arrested. You don't bring up the lawyer. You want information. Lawyer gets people to stop talking.
Well, it's an interrogation technique because he's also like, I don't believe you did it, but the DA, they got a lot of evidence. I'm trying to help you.
But he's talking about a lawyer. Immediately, you're going to say, then call my lawyer.
Jamie
Conversation over.
Jamie doesn't, though.
No, what happens is they end up just like having a heated conversation. He leaves. Well, he does try to tell him that it's strange that this mysterious package appeared and now his wife is dead. And he says, in the town where I'm from, a ventriloquist dummy is a bad omen. So once again, it showing up, he should have already been like, we're going to keep that outside of the house.
Yeah. Him saying that here definitely makes him like he should have said something in the first scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, that's very specific small town bullshit. Like, a ventriloquist dummy is a bad omen. Okay.
Yeah. Or like, this is how you pronounce the town name, not this way. And we're all like really crazy about it.
That's something the listeners simply won't understand.
I'm just saying, people have very specific things with their towns. You should understand that, is my point.
In the end, they let him go. And Jamie's like, good. It'll give me more time to do your job for you. He heads back to their apartment, which I would never. He side-eyes the doll, picks it up, and brings it into the living room.
And that's the point for me where it's like, okay, like you just said that you believe this doll is somehow connected to your wife's murder or whatever.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just take an axe to it right there?
I know.
Or bring it to the dump or just
Something.
literally throw it out your window. You're in the middle of the city. Just do something with it.
He looks through the box and he finds a small tear in the velvet lining. He rips it all and finds what seems like an advertisement or something for the amazing Mary Shaw and Billy at Raven's Fair, which is the town name. So the next scene is him driving to his hometown, which is known as a quiet place to live. That's what it says on the welcome sign. Driving down Main Street, it's all run down and empty with all the stores closed, but he reaches a mansion and knocks on the door. A youngish blonde woman opens the door. She's so happy to see him, and I immediately am like, this is a stepmother. She hugs him, and she's like, we haven't been introduced. So she's a new stepmother. Her name is Ella, and yep, she is the stepmother, and so he's here to see his father. Obviously, they don't have a great relationship. As he's going up the stairs, she's like, he won't fight you. He doesn't fight anyone. Not anymore. And he responds by saying, then you're not married to my father. Ooh.
Yeah. And so, like I said, his dad is played by Bob Gunton is his name. Absolute legend.
When he reaches his father, he finds him in a wheelchair. He had a stroke 2 months ago. Jamie asks why he never told him. And he says, Ella's up there as well. And he says, you never return my calls. The dad gives his condolences and insists on taking care of the funeral, but Jamie won't take it.
We always spoil the movies when we watch them.
Yeah.
Right. So, here's just my every episode warning. If you haven't watched this movie, you intend to turn it off right now because we're about to spoil the end right this second. Okay. As you find out later, his dad is dead. Ella is controlling him much the way that somebody would control a ventriloquist dummy. And this scene, starting with her little foreshadowing where she says he doesn't fight anyone, not anymore, is just full of clues, and watching it with that context. So when they first walk in the room, his dad is in this wheelchair and he's got an oxygen mask on. And when she pulls the oxygen mask off his face, his head just kind of lolls back. And if you're looking for it, he looks dead in that moment when the oxygen mask is off, or when she's putting it on him, I think is what it is.
Okay.
But either way, there's a moment where his head just kind of rolls back and he looks dead as shit. Huh. And then throughout this conversation, this is a scene that I really, really appreciated watching with this context. The way they interact, she is standing behind him to his right, and there are a couple times where he just kind of tilts his head and looks up at her in the way that a ventriloquist dummy in somebody's lap would do.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's, again, if you're watching it, it seems very weird. Maybe the dad's just really sick. Maybe it's just not a good, well-written scene, whatever it is. But with that context, the physical interactions between the two of them are mirroring what a ventriloquist and their dummy do, and it's awesome to watch. It's really my favorite part of the movie is this scene.
Yeah, but again, if you watching it for the first time, you're like, this is terrible acting. Now, Shawshank Redemption, again, I've never seen it, but I know it's
one of the best movies ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I expect that the acting would be incredible, and I am watching it this whole time, and I'm like, this man is in Shawshank Redemption, and the way he is delivering these lines. But actually, he is a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
Because it's he was telling us.
Yeah, he really was. And that's what I wrote here is it's a really well done scene, but one that you can't properly appreciate the first time you watch it. And unfortunately, this movie isn't good enough to warrant a rewatch.
Exactly.
Unless you're me and, just watch movies over and over again.
So Jamie cuts to the chase as to why he's here. And he asks about a story that his mom used to read to him. And they keep calling it a story and a poem. So, what is it?
It's neither.
It's neither, yeah.
It's
a limerick.
It's 4 sentences, and they're terrible.
We already said it, but I'm going to say it again because I have another point about it. So, it's in the movie, it's beware the stare of Mary Shaw. She had no children, only dolls. And if you see her in your dreams, be sure you never, ever scream. And Ella says that's just an old story that parents told children to keep them in line, which we've heard in every horror movie we've watched so far. Now, I point this out because the poem was different between the movie and the trailer. They say in the trailer, Beware the stare of Mary Shaw. She had no children, only dolls. And if you see her, do not scream. She'll rip your tongue out at the seam.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, which also might be better because, like I said, Donnie throws out that line that her tongue was ripped out, the wife. But then it's like, again, it's like a throwaway line. He just kind of says it and it's not made a point or anything. And I forgot about it.
You do kind of see it at the end
but now
with Jamie,
you're
like
watching
she does that to Jamie.
Right. But you're watching the whole movie kind of like forgetting that point. If they had maybe included it in the poem the whole time, you would know. He ends up leaving in frustration. She tries to get him to stay, like to sleep at the house and, insisting that his father has changed. And as they go down the stairs, he points to a photo saying that his mother used to be in it until he drove her to kill herself. And I guess the other stepmother too. At the funeral home, he meets with the owner, Henry, an old man who is also the caregiver for his wife, who I guess maybe has dementia, seemingly. They discuss the arrangements, then he heads to the hotel. He sits the dummy in a chair, and it's looking out the window. Like, why the fuck is this dummy not in the box the entire time?
Yeah, leave it in the trunk of your car.
Yeah.
Do literally anything but prop it up on the chair at the end of your bed. Yeah, literally anything.
Psychotic.
Also, I love this scene because he's in the hotel room and he's like laying on the bed and he's looking at a picture of his wife from his wallet.
Yes.
And that just made me realize, like, 2007 was like, I think that was the year before the first iPhone came out. So that really was kind of like a pre-smartphone world.
So he's looking at the wallet photo of his wife, and the camera pans to the foot of the bed where the table is with the doll sitting in the chair. There's a neon light for the motel blinking, and it's making that blinking noise that neon signs make. And the bathroom sink has a drip.
And it's also that same sound and effect really is used in Lights Out, which was Lee Wanell. Mm-hmm. Also, same thing.
The sound of the neon drones out, the dummy's eyes shift, and the dripping continues, but the sound of it drops out. We hear Lisa call Jamie's name. He opens his eyes to find the doll right there by his face. And when he fully wakes up from the bed, the doll is back in its chair. But then we see an old woman dressed in black, and her face is behind the curtain that's kind of fluttering in the wind. Her face comes hard to the camera behind the sheer curtains. Definitely a dead woman's face. He jumps, turns on the light to find the dummy facing him.
Yeah, and when this happened, you let out kind of a half-hearted scream. You couldn't even be bothered to really scream. You're just like, ah!
Yeah. Her face is scary. That night, back at the funeral home, the body arrives and Henry begins work. When he unzips the bag, he takes a step back and he's like, no, it can't be. And we hear the ghostly whispering again. For some reason, he thinks it's Marion, his wife, and there's a crawl space in the morgue behind a door. It's just this crawl space in there. He opens it, and he does find her saying, she's here now. I feel like her dementia's, the veil is thin with her, so she knows things are happening.
Yeah, she's actually really in tune, but people don't get it, so they think that she's, got Alzheimer's or something.
Well, I think she does.
Well, does she, though?
I don't know, I guess.
I'm just saying, all we ever see her is her weird prophesizing about Mary Shaw. When they showed her, you were appalled. Is that fucking Gwyneth Paltrow's mom?
They look alike.
It looks like Blythe Danner, yeah. It's not.
He goes to the body and takes a picture with a camera from the year cameras were invented, basically. Next, the funeral happens, which is kind of like a montage scene. Nothing really happens at it. The father didn't even go, though, I noticed.
Yeah, and the funeral was needlessly dramatic. It seemed like the funeral from John Wick, where he is Jason is this is a badass, I'm getting ready to take revenge funeral. That is the vibe I got from this scene.
Yeah, because no one's there. Where's her family? I don't know.
But also, the mortician brings his wife to the funeral, which I feel is a bad idea. I feel this term is offensive, but I don't know what other term to use. But get a babysitter, right?
Yeah.
Maybe don't bring your dementia wife to the funeral. I feel that's just not a good time for anybody.
He goes walking through the woods after, for some reason, and sees someone walking in the near distance, and he follows them, and it's Marion, Henry's wife. She says, did you see her when she killed your wife? And then she says the poem, but Henry arrives to take her. Once they leave, something catches Jamie's eye, I guess. I don't know. And he moves a bunch of brush to find the grave of Mary Shaw. He races back to the motel and inspects the dummy. On the back of his neck is inscribed with Billy. So that's the name of the dummy, Billy. Why didn't he already put that together when he found the ad in the velvet lining?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we learned his name already.
Yeah. Back in the car, now Billy is in the passenger seat. Again, not in the box. It moves its eyes toward him and then back, and we hear Mary Shaw humming faintly. He pulls over, goes to the graveyard again. He finds one marked Billy amongst several others with just a single name. I don't understand this. I know it's right near the grave of Mary Shaw, but like we didn't see that he also saw all of these. So how does he know?
Yeah. Later in the movie, the mortician says she demanded she be buried with all her dolls. So given that he grew up there, I just assume it's like one of those things like all the kids knew, like, oh, she's buried with all her dolls.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Billy's mouth opens as he digs into the grave to find that someone had already dug it out, which again should have been obvious. And then the ambient noise goes away. I like when they did this because you're not noticing ambient noise happening until it's not happening. So it was kind of cool that they played with that. He drops Billy back into his grave, and just before he covers it, the head turns on its own to face him. He has basically no reaction and just covers it and goes back to the car. In the car, we hear Mary Shaw laughing and some things like whirring around him, causing him to look around through all the windows. And when it seems to stop and he finally relaxes, Billy is in the driver's side window. He jumps out of the car, though, to find like nothing.
You screamed, like a real scream at this.
I did, yeah. He goes back to the hotel and washes his face in the bathroom. When he comes out, he jumps because Billy is on the bed. And so is Donnie Wahlberg.
Yeah, and this was another very obvious scary movie scare where like you see his view of the room, then he puts the towel over his face, and it's like, okay, obviously when he's able to see again, something will be scary.
He's shaving again, by the way.
Every scene.
He's like, I thought I told you not to leave town, but you never said that, at least on camera, so whatever. And he uses the dummy and says, why did you bury me, Jamie? Is it because I'm evidence of a crime? Jamie tells Donnie that Mary Shaw was buried with her doll collection and that either the person who sent the doll did it or knows who did. And then Donnie just leaves, taking Billy with him as evidence, and says, good night, neighbor, because he's in the hotel room next door.
And watching this whole scene, I'm like, Donnie Wahlberg just broke like so many laws. Okay, that doll, inadmissible. Okay, he broke chain of custody by digging it up himself and then sleeping with it in his hotel room. Okay, like he could have planted anything on that doll overnight. That doll, you ruined the evidence, Donnie. Yeah. Okay, you can't just barge into a man's hotel room without probable cause and just start questioning him without a lawyer present. You just can't do any of these things, and any case he might have had against Jamie has now been ruined and it will be a mistrial, okay?
Well, as we learn, these motels don't have locked doors, so if he just walked into an unlocked room, that changes things.
I guess. But
I don't know the law. The next morning, he's shaving again and talking to Billy about how jealous he is of Billy's smooth skin. And when he leaves, Jamie just sneaks in because, again, no locks.
And I like watching this scene. I felt like Donnie Wahlberg was about to die.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's like with the doll and he's like talking to it. Like, you're like, oh man, this guy is about to die. He doesn't.
No,
he lives much longer.
Jamie takes Billy and returns to the funeral home. He asks Marion if the doll is a friend of hers and asks her about Mary Shaw. And he's like very aggressive towards her, which is not good. She panics until Henry comes out, who doesn't like seeing the doll and says, like, around here we don't say her name, so she's Voldemort. They sit down and Henry tells the story of Mary Shaw. She's a ventriloquist who lost her voice. She worked and lived in a theater out on Lost Lake, and we then go back in time with Henry to the first time that he saw her perform. She's introduced and she comes out on stage. She's like pulling this large case behind her. She opens it, but it's empty. She calls for Billy and he responds. She points to Henry and asks him to look under his chair, and Billy is there. So she asks him to bring him up to the stage. Billy also like knows Henry's name. So is she a ventriloquist or a witch? Like, what's happening?
¿Por qué no los dos?
Yeah. Henry is not entertained. He seems very nervous and maybe scared, but he brings the dummy up to her and then returns to his seat. As the performance goes on, some asshole kid starts heckling her by saying, "I can see your lips moving."
Do you just call an 8-year-old an asshole?
Yeah, he is. The performance stops and everyone looks at him and he doubles down saying, "What? I can see your lips moving." She says, "Young Michael thinks you're a dummy and I do your voice for you." So now she magically knows his name. They kind of do this arguing thing where they're doing this constant back and forth where it's almost like they're talking at the same time. So everyone just like erupts in applause.
Yeah, I mean, if this is ventriloquism, it is very impressive. Yeah.
Henry says that some days later, that disbelieving boy was missing, and shortly after that, she was murdered. He started this off saying she lost her voice, but she is actually murdered. So
yeah, I was gonna say that he says she lost her voice, and then what does that even mean?
And her body and soul and everything.
A couple little notes on this scene. One, the theater is on Lost Lake. Lost Lake. You couldn't. What do you think is going to happen there? Of course, people are going to die on Lost Lake.
Yeah.
Two, young Henry is played by Keel Gilchrist, who would go on to play Paul in It Follows.
No. Ew.
Yeah.
I do recognize him, though.
I knew he looked familiar. Yeah, so I had to look that up. I also wrote here, I saw Jeff Dunham once. I'm pretty sure it also resulted in a few deaths. They were all mid-show suicides.
Oh, my God.
Sorry, Jeff Dunham. I'm just kidding, buddy. We're good friends, me and Jeff.
So Henry's father ended up handling the body at the funeral home. So this is a family business. She asked not only to be buried with her dolls, but to become one herself. And one night he snuck down to the morgue. As he approached the body, he spots Billy. And Billy watches as Henry kind of steps onto the bar that's like connecting the legs to the table. But immediately, everything becomes rickety when he does that. And the whole thing falls over. She falls out of the casket. Her face is just directly next to his on the floor. He screams and backs away. And then when he looks back at the mess, the body is gone and she's standing like almost over him. Her face is very dead, scary looking, but it opens up like a dummy doll.
Yeah, so he talked about she made final requests to be buried with her dolls, and then he alludes to her other final request by his dad to be turned into a doll. That's what she requested his dad do. Did anyone tell him he doesn't have to do that? Like, is there a law that, like, you have to honor somebody's final request? Because, like, I'm pretty sure they're not allowed to do that. Like, it's like, oh, what did you do with that woman's body? Well, I cut out her eyes and put her jaw on a hinge. He's a serial killer. That is not
if it's
normal.
in writing.
I don't think that makes it legally binding. Like, can I, say I want my body to be put on the hood of a pickup truck and then, like, driven 60 miles an hour and then hit the brakes suddenly so the body flies into traffic? That's my final request. You don't have to do that,
Well,
right?
no, because that would cause harm to others.
I'm pretty sure this would cause harm to somebody else. I don't know who, but somebody is being harmed by turning a living person or a once living person into a ventriloquist doll.
It's her wishes. He's being respectful.
Yeah.
His father comes in, turns the lights on, and when he does that, the body is like back on the floor where it was. Henry says ever since then, the town was plagued by death, with bodies propped up like mannequins, all killed in the same way. With that, Jamie heads to the theater, leaving behind the dummy at the funeral home, which is really rude because they don't want it. They don't want the dead body.
That is really rude. And this was another one of those inconsistencies for me where, obviously during movies like this, you tend to turn off your suspension of disbelief, or, you suspend your disbelief rather. But, like, if this one town were just plagued by people dying, by having their tongue ripped out and their face just like what literally just happened to Jamie's wife, maybe, like, the cops would know about that, right?
But also it's happening to specific families too. So, like, it's not a mystery.
Right. But what I mean is, if that is something that has continuously happened to people in this town over the course of like 30, 40 years, like, people would know that town. There would be stories about that in that town. And Mark Wahlberg would know that. I mean, Donnie Wahlberg would know that. Mark Wahlberg would also know that, though.
For the record.
But Donnie Wahlberg would know that. You know, and that was a little bit like, oh man, like you're telling me that just entire families have been murdered in this exact same specific way that Jamie's wife just died, and nobody puts those together. Not even like, not nobody.
Right.
It's
That goes
crazy.
back to Blondie and her comment about high as a kite to cut your wife's tongue out.
Yeah.
She should know the stories.
Yeah. And also at this point, you asked how long the movie is, and we were about 45 minutes in.
It just constantly felt like we were leading up to the end because I just felt like they should have known things a lot faster.
Yeah, agreed.
Meanwhile, Donnie is at the graveyard and he tells Mary's grave that he's just going to check on the kids, which made me laugh. When Jamie reaches the theater, he finds it abandoned and like decrepit. There used to be a bridge to reach it across the lake, but that's long since fallen, and he finds a canoe to get across. Inside the theater, there's trees growing inside it, so it's been abandoned for a while. He climbs the stage, plays a few notes on the piano. He goes backstage and climbs up into like the rafters. Don't know how he just knows that's where he needs to go, but he does it. As he's walking across the rickety walkway above the stage, screws are popping out as he walks. So basically we know that this is going to fall apart later at like a really key important time. And it does. There's a hallway with windows and curtains blowing dramatically. He reaches her living quarters and starts walking around. He finds a chest with newspaper clippings and this old book. As he stands up, we see in the mirror a woman in black walk by.
And you went, ah, fuck.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Yeah, you were unhappy.
The book is Designs for Dolls, or like a human body to become a doll, question mark, question mark. It's very similar to what we saw in the opening credits. It says, quote, to make the perfect doll. And like there's just diagrams and stuff.
Use flesh.
The disbelieving boy who went missing is also in it. Newspaper clippings about him being missing. And that's where we learn his name is Michael Ashen.
Jamie's last name is
At
Ashen.
this point, we were supposed to know
Yeah.
that they're related. The ambient noise goes away again, and in the reflection, he sees like a dead body. Like, I don't know whose body that was. Was it Mary Shaw? I don't know.
He saw something.
And so he's like, I'm out of here. Meanwhile, at the funeral home, the guy hears his wife talking. I wrote the guy because I forgot his name is Henry. She says she didn't talk. She didn't say anything. And as he comes into the room, she says, hey, say something. Why have you gone so quiet? She's talking to Billy, the doll. So he picks that up and he's taking it back to and says he's taking it back to where it came from while she insists that he was talking to her. He brings the doll to the morgue, and while he's looking around for a shovel, Billy's eyes move.
And so this is another moment for me that, again, pulls me out of the movie. Because in this scene, I mean, throughout the movie, but this specific scene, Henry is like, this doll is dangerous. There's something wrong with this doll. I'm getting rid of this doll. And then immediately turns his back to it.
Yeah.
Like, if this doll is so dangerous, like, people seem to be scared of this doll, but at the same time, all of them are completely unwilling to respect it as a danger. So, like, why are you scared of it if you don't think it's going to hurt you? And if you think it's going to hurt you, why are you turning your back on it? It drove me crazy. Like, it is just this entire movie up to this point. Everybody's, like, afraid of the doll, but completely willing to have it around them all the time.
Like, it's Chucky, but it's also not Chucky.
Yeah.
They're like, it's going to kill us, but also it's fine. So Billy's eyes move. He hears like a humming sound and he thinks it's Marion in the crawl space again. So he immediately starts apologizing for yelling and he goes to the crawl space. This time he crawls in, which he did not do last time. So we know it's going to be bad. There's like a figure seemingly in there in white. And when he reaches for it, it's actually just like nothing. The door closes on him. He yells for Marion to open the door. And while he's banging, all the sound goes away. He bangs more, but Billy says, hello, Henry. He turns away from the door and a hand is seen coming out from one of the sides of the walls. He backs into a corner and there's Mary Shaw's face. He screams. Her tongue snakes out of her mouth. She says, your voice is mine, Henry. And then his body like bursts out of the crawl space and he's dead in a manner quite similar to Lisa.
Yep. Few notes on this scene from me. The first is, as always, during any tense scene, I've got a running transcript of Brianna's reactions. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No. 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 God, that was you, the entire scene.
Well, can I just say, because he crawled in and I
Yeah.
was like, why are you doing that this time? You didn't do that last
And
time.
you were like switching between like typing like furiously, like crazy fast and covering your eyes. You were going back and forth between
Yeah.
the two. But that said, it was a really good scene. There was really good tension. The actor playing Henry crushed this scene. Like he sold that terror. Like it was really good. I really appreciate it. The hand appearing around the beam, great, creepy. But they fucking ruined it. Your voice is mine now, Henry. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Completely ruins the scene. It pulls you right out of it. That was maybe the most frustrating scene for me because that was so good. Just immediately, it's like making this like giant great ice cream sundae and then topping it with a piece of poop. You know, you just ruined it.
You know what it reminds me of? The Horcruxes in Harry Potter in the movies when they go to like kill the Horcrux, particularly the necklace, and it like bursts out and it's like whisper talking in this like weird way. That's exactly what it made me think of, and it is cheesy. And yeah, you're right. It did. Really
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to be a real scary movie, you shouldn't draw parallels to Harry Potter.
Meanwhile, Jamie's rushing back to his father's house where they're eating dinner. We already know what's actually going on here, but I did not at the time, obviously. And I was like, they're so fucking happy. This is so weird and so unsettling. What is going on with this couple? Like, it was so fucking weird.
And it's great because she's feeding him soup.
Yes.
Dinner is soup because he can't chew because he's a corpse. And so she's just giving him a little soup. I love that.
Jamie wants to know the truth, asking who is Michael Ashen and what does he have to do with Mary Shaw? So this is where I figured out that Jamie's last name was Ashen, and he's related to that heckler kid or heckling kid.
I'm sorry, that asshole, as you called him.
That asshole heckling child, yes. Yeah. His father goes on to tell the story, which is that when Michael went missing, the townspeople searched for him, but there was only really one suspect, Mary Shaw. They took justice into their own hands, cut out her tongue, but she didn't stay dead, he said. She returned for revenge. One by one, each of the men involved were killed, as were their wives and their children and their children's children, and so on. He says, all these years you were mad I sent you away, but I did it to protect you.
There is actually a huge error in this scene and in this story, though.
I mean, okay, more than one, but go on.
Well, the newspaper clipping that he found about Michael Ashen said that he disappeared in 1932. Mm-hmm. Mary Shaw's tombstone said she died in 1941, 9 years later.
Okay.
But this story that his dad is telling basically just says he went missing, we knew it was Mary, we fucking killed her.
Yeah.
They didn't wait 9 years to kill her.
No.
So there's really no explanation for that.
Also, what we find out later is that she made Michael Ashen's body into a doll. So, like, there had to have been some time for her to do that and spend the time that she spent with it.
That's true, but like the doll was still in the theater, which means they never found it.
I know.
Which means like
But we see the scene later where she's feeding the doll and talking to it and saying like, I love you, mommy.
That's true.
So it's all messed up.
Yeah.
It's more messed up. We had no clue his father sent him away anywhere. We didn't know why they had a bad relationship whatsoever. That's never told to us. So that's like a weird, unnecessary line.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, did his mom kill herself or did this happen to her?
Oh, my assumption was that this happened to her and the stepmother so that no more like heirs can be created.
But also like, why him now? And how did his dad get to be so old before he finally died?
Well, right. This is my other question. So I had 6 questions. 1, we had no clue that his father ever sent him away. He sent him away to where? We'll never know. 2, why is he still alive? Now he's not, but we didn't know this. 3, did he tell the new wife? Yes or no, doesn't actually matter. Her face, though, in this scene said no. And if he didn't, is she leaving now? 4, why did he even have a child? 5, why didn't he ever tell his son? This is kind of that family secret that you might tell. 6, if who Mary Shaw kills is concentrated to specific families, that is something Henry would have known, should have shared, should have explained a little more when he told the story initially.
Yeah.
So many plot holes.
Yeah. And also, would that ever come up with Jamie? Like, how did Grandpa die? It's like, oh, he had his tongue ripped out by a
Right.
ghost. How did grandma die? She had her tongue ripped out by a ghost. How did his grandpa die? He had his tongue ripped out by a ghost. The doctor asks you if your family has a history of your tongue being ripped out by ghosts.
Yeah.
You have to know that stuff.
And this would be a thing, like he did mention that his mom told him the story, but this would be a story that like his mom would be telling him every single night. Like, just so you know. So he wouldn't even be needing to put the pieces together by
Yeah.
now. He would just know. But he believes he can stop it, so he goes, and the dad's like, please, son. The acting's so bad. But again, not so bad.
So here was my notes on this scene. My one note. I don't have 7 questions like you, but I do have a big question on this scene watching it with that context. If this is Ella / Mary Shaw, why is she showing compassion towards Jamie in this scene? Why is she being his dad begging for forgiveness? How does that play into her goal at all? You know, like I'm gonna kill this guy. I'm gonna turn him into a dummy, and then I'm gonna fix his relationship with his son.
I got around this by saying she wanted him to stay there so that she could kill him or make him into a doll. But also the alternate ending might play into that too.
Yeah, so the alternate ending does a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the alternate ending is better than the original ending.
It at least explains something.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like that's probably part of the issue Lee had with producers, because this ending is a leaving the door open for a sequel ending.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to the ending quite
Yeah.
soon.
Not soon enough.
While he's trying to leave the house, he literally runs into Donnie. Like, Donnie has arrived at the house and shares that all the dolls have been dug up, but no one in town knows about this Mary Shaw story. So they kind of walk back into the foyer, and Jamie tries to say that everyone's too afraid to talk about it. Ella interrupts to ask if everything's okay, and then says that there's an urgent call for Jamie. It's Henry, though his voice is extremely distorted, but he's calling for him to come to the theater and telling Jamie that he needs to come now.
And as we find out, this is Ella / Mary Shaw
Yeah.
doing like ventriloquism,
Yeah.
standing right next to him.
Yeah.
But like there's a lot of like static and like far away sounding, and like why did she do it like that? Why didn't she just make him sound normal?
Because cell phones on Lost Lake in 2007 might not be good.
I guess that's right. She's like, he'd never believe he got that good reception out there.
Donnie wants to arrest Jamie. So he's like, don't make me cuff you, Jamie. And like he ends up pushing him over and running away and getting to his car. And Donnie chases after him saying, I don't have a full tank of gas. So he is just a hilarious little cop.
Yeah. Don't make me chase you. I don't have a full tank of gas. He just told you where he was going.
Yeah.
You can stop for gas and meet him there. He's going to the theater. It's fine.
Jamie reaches the lake, grabs a lantern that's conveniently located there because it's nighttime now. He gets in the canoe, which, by the way, how did Henry get there and also send the canoe back? I mean, that should have tipped him off right away.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely should have tipped him off. And also, like, when he gets into the theater, he, like, hears Henry being like, Jamie, I'm over here. And it's like, dude, this is what just happened with your wife, like, 2 days ago. How do you not put that together?
And he knows the story. I mean, Donnie reaches the lake not long after. He can see Jamie's light fading in the theater, so he knows he's in there. When he's inside trying to get back to Mary's quarters, Donnie finds another boat and makes his way across. Jamie hears Henry throughout the theater calling to him. Once he's in the quarters, Donnie magically reaches him shortly thereafter, so quickly. Jamie had just called out to Henry again, and Donnie's like, he's not here. But a female voice responds with, yes, he is. And Donnie tells Jamie, you say I told you so, and I'll shoot you.
Donnie Wahlberg's character here is, I mean, he's not good. Like, he's a bad cop. He's a dick. Like, I hate him. But to his credit, at this point, when he hears that ghost voice, he's all in immediately. He's like, all right, we're here. We're going to figure this out. Let's fucking go. And he is in, like, he's on Jamie's side from that moment till the end.
Yeah.
And I just love that for him, honestly.
And he has a massive gun, which, like, where was that the whole time?
Yeah, there's, like, a point where, like, they just start walking, and then Donnie's like, you follow me.
Yeah.
And puts him behind him. It's like, yeah, cop with a shotgun, please go first.
Yes.
Of course I'm going to follow you.
So yeah, they're in this kind of like hallway thing that leads to another room full of dolls and doll parts. Donnie finds a dummy on the floor that, like Billy, and he picks it up saying, "If I see one more of these," and throws it over his shoulder, which hits a giant red curtain. And what do you think we see?
One more of those?
Wow, I'd say 100 more.
Oh.
The curtain falls and there's a massive wall of dummies. So many dummies. And Jamie says they're all home. Someone brought them back here. Immediately, I realize here it has to be the new wife, Ella.
Yeah, you turned to me, you said, "I know what's going on." So I paused the movie and I had you tell me.
Yeah.
And you said, quote, "It's the new wife." In the dinner scene when she was feeding him soup, I was like, why is she so fucking happy? She just gives weird fucking vibes. And she just got way too excited greeting him, like he was there for a funeral. And she's pretty. She's like the great-great-granddaughter. And then you like clapped triumphantly and took a sip of your water.
Yes.
And I just started the movie back up with no response.
But there's a massive flaw in my theory.
What's that?
That she's a great-great-granddaughter of a woman who had no children.
It's true.
So I forgot the story myself.
I mean, maybe it's sort of like, what's that movie? Not Mona Lisa Smile.
I don't know.
The Da Vinci Code.
Oh.
Where, she had a secret baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's like a great niece situation.
Yeah.
Samesies, right? They find that the only one missing is Billy. So they look behind them and they see something covered in a red blanket. Jamie pulls it off and this is Michael Ashen.
It's great, Uncle Michael. Yeah.
He is like a marionette. That's how his arms are kind of strung up, and it's
like an NSYNC member in the Bye 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 video.
Literally.
Yeah.
It's actually in the "It's Gonna Be Me" video.
What? No. Bye 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 is the one with the puppets and the dolls.
Oh yeah, no, they're dolls in the "It's Gonna Be Me" video.
Fake fan. Fake fan.
So many dolls. This was weird. It didn't really look like it was ever a person. It was just weird.
I mean, it was just like 150 years worth of decomposition, really.
I guess, yeah. Jamie says, "I think we just solved a 7-year-old missing person case." And Donnie asks who it is, and he says, "A long-lost relative." Then we lose sound, and Jamie says, "This is how it starts." So he's finally catching on. Donnie says, "What's going on, Jamie?" And this is where I noted that he says his name so many times. He must be paid extra for it. I don't know.
What's going on, Jamie?
Jamie.
What's going on here? Jamie.
In the wall of dolls, each of their eyes and heads start turning all toward the same direction. It goes doll by doll by doll, and they follow it.
It's a good shot.
Yeah, it's
and
cool.
like you hear the wood creaking as the necks move, and they go just kind of like by position, and then they show a wider shot, and they start turning their heads faster and more of them at once. I really like this shot, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. They're all facing a hideously scary clown in a rocking chair.
Yeah, your response was, "What the fuck?" Fun fact, when I was a child, during certain points of my childhood, I shared a room with my brother, and somebody had given him, when he was a baby, this like clown doll. And it wasn't like, like a poltergeist clown doll or like this clown doll where it's like, but it was like wooden, very basic features. And it had just like, a circle and triangles and like a jack-o'-lantern mouth painted on, basically. And then it had like a little like pointy like dunce hat, like Pagliacci. And that sat in a chair at the end of the bed, and it lived there. And I was afraid of clowns in my teen years for a long time. And I think those two things are related. But that's what this scene reminded me of.
Yeah, it's a really scary clown. And also, I think this was an unnecessary scene. Like, they were like, how can we throw a scary clown in here? Let's do it this way. It was just not
100%. This
necessary.
Was a producer's note. 100%.
Yeah. They approach it, and Jamie says, "Mary Shaw?" But, like, why, though? Like, why does clown equal Mary Shaw? It doesn't make sense. It stops rocking, and he calls her name again, and it starts moving again. It also responds to say, "Clever." Okay. Jamie asks, "What do you want?" And she says, "To silence all those who silenced me." And he asks if that's why she killed Michael Ashen. She says, "So hard to construct the perfect doll. Sometimes you have to use existing parts." And with that, we see a flashback of her creating Michael into a doll with her saying, like, "I love you, mommy," as Michael, and feeding it. He asks her why she killed Lisa, and she says, "Come closer and I'll tell you." And he actually goes closer. Even Donnie is like, "No."
Yeah, Donnie Wahlberg is like shaking his head in the background, and he's just like, "What the fuck? Don't do that, you idiot!" And he just does it.
And then the clown says, "Come closer and I'll whisper it to you." And it says, "You weren't the last Ashen. The last Ashen was inside her." And then the tongue comes out and licks his cheek. He backs away. Now, how the fuck did the ghost know this? He didn't even know.
Well, I mean, it's a ghost, right? They probably keep tabs on like the spirits coming in and out.
That's just bullshit.
But also, and it also, again, it raises that question of if Mary Shaw wanted to wipe out the entire family, why did she wait 70 years?
Yeah.
You know, she could have just done it at any point,
I know.
but she
Like,
just...
Jamie didn't even have to exist.
Yeah, that's my point exactly. Like, if she had killed his father when he was Jamie's age, bam, last Ashen right there. Yeah. Like, are you taking your sweet time? What's going on here? It's nonsense.
Hands come out from behind the clown's face and like grab it and lift it up. Then behind it, we see Mary slipping her tongue through it. They don't scream, and instead they shoot her. And then she starts coming through each of the dolls in the wall. So they continue shooting each doll as they realize that she's living through the dolls. So if they kill the dolls, it'll get rid of her. A fire starts somehow, and they run to escape. She follows them, and while they're on that rickety walkway, guess what happens? It breaks. Donnie falls, and he screams, and she swoops in because he screamed, and he comes back out with his mouth ripped open, tongue out, blood, dead.
And as he's laying on the ground dead, there is a shot of his shaver buzzing on the floor.
Really?
Yeah.
I missed that.
I laughed out loud. You were probably typing or something because it wasn't a long shot. But love that. Just
That's so funny.
Great.
Jamie's also struggling. He tries to lift himself up, but she appears and surprises him. He almost screams, but he covers his mouth as he falls. He falls through the rotted stage and lands in water. And then he starts swimming through it. He's like, there's like mannequins down there. It's like creepy and weird. Holds his breath for an impossible amount of time, longer than Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic, and comes up outside in the lake.
Yeah, watching that scene actually made me, like I wrote, watching Jamie hold his breath for 45 seconds is making me really think about how out of shape I am.
It was only 45 seconds. It felt longer.
It wasn't that long. Yeah, it felt longer. But and then the other thing that bothered me about that scene is he just like climbs out of the lake, fully dressed, sopping wet clothes, and just gets right in the car.
Yeah.
You got to take those clothes off. Like
no time.
It sucks to drive naked, but like you can't I physically could not walk from the shore to the car in jeans that are sopping wet.
No.
They would be around your ankles. They'd fall right off. You got to do something about that.
So he sees that the theater is burning down. He gets back into his car and says one left. So assuming all the dolls in the theater are taken care of, now we have to go kill Billy. He returns to the funeral home and is calling for Henry, which I don't understand how he still believes Henry is alive.
Yeah, that's what. Why would you do that? That's so stupid.
He can hear Marion sobbing and follows her cries to find her in the morgue, cradling her husband's dead body. She's holding his head saying, "Please say something," which is like so sad. Jamie asks her who did this and what happened to Billy. She says, "Mr. Ashton took the doll." And he's like, "Well, that's impossible because he's in a wheelchair and he doesn't leave the house." She says, "He left the house. He has the doll." So he goes back to the house. It's dark and he reaches the top of the stairs. There's like this grandfather clock ticking really loud until it's not. He goes into a room that has a fire lit but some furniture covered. So I'm like, is this like an unused room but the fire is lit? He hears Henry and Donnie's voices. He goes to the covered furniture and uncovers it, revealing Billy in a bassinet, like he's a baby.
I will say, though, in a covered bassinet is the most reasonable place I've seen anybody store Billy this entire movie.
True. Very true. Mary comes bursting in, and he throws Billy into the conveniently lit fire, and then Mary Shaw is gone. In the lightning flash outside, because it's still lightning, he spots his father sitting there, very still and silent in his wheelchair. He finally turns on a light, and his father looks very dead. And that's because he is. He like falls forward, and we see his back, which is completely cut open, and there's like a stick shoved in there because he's a dummy now.
Yeah, his body is hollowed out, and he has a setup similar to the actual inside of a ventriloquist dummy.
Yeah.
That's what they look like, and you just kind of like there's just a big opening where his spine used to be,
Ugh.
and you just kind of put your hand in there and move that stick up and down and turn it sideways for the eyes and whatnot.
That's when we get a whole putting together the story montage of what was really going on, which explains like the weirdness of the family scenes. When she's feeding him soup, it's just like coming out the tube, which how does she clean that?
Yeah. She doesn't. She's a ghost. She doesn't care.
True. And it's just the same as what Mary did to Michael. He's been propped up by Ella. It was her the whole time.
And this montage is like, it's cut with like, you see the scene where he's taking the phone call from Henry and Ella's standing right there, and they zoom in on like her throat moving as if she's making the noises, and and then they like cut that with shots of Jamie just being like, what? No. And it's awful.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
It's bad. Ella appears, and in the lightning flash, we see Mary Shaw's dead face, like in her face. She says something. I don't even know what she says. But he screams, and because of that, he's dead.
Yeah, she just like shows back up, and he's like, no. And then she rips out his fucking tongue, and that's the end of the movie.
But like, we never know who she is. Like, so she's not the granddaughter because she can't be. I wrote like maybe a great niece. Is she a ghost? Like they killed all the dolls, but she still goes on. I guess because the dad is a doll, so she can always go on. Like so no one knows.
The dad was her last doll. That part is definite. Like he has to get rid of all her dolls. He thought he did. He didn't because her dad's the last doll. His dad's the last doll.
Okay.
So that's why she's still alive. If he had chucked his dad into that fire, she would be gone, presumably, if the rules were,
as we
correct.
think they are.
But there is an alternate ending, right, that explains some of this. Do you have it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the alternate ending is Ella knocks out Jamie after he makes the discovery. She explains that the original Ella was a human with Edward, I guess that's his dad,
Yes.
as an abusive husband. Edward knocked her down the stairs and killed their first unborn child. So Ella went to go dig up the grave where Billy was buried. We'll never know why. And becomes possessed by Mary Shaw. Afterwards, Ella makes a family photograph and then dresses Mary Shaw, tells a bedtime story to a child by candlelight. So they're kind of combining the original beginning, I guess.
Yeah.
Later revealed to be a traumatized and brainwashed yet still very much alive Jamie, with his voice removed or tongue ripped out, depending on how they were going to work out the effects. The story that she's telling is the poem. Ella also reveals that only silence can save you from Mary Shaw, then blows out the candle, ending the film. So kind of better, but kind of not.
I mean, I think it's better just because it's not stupid. Just the shot of him being like, no, as it like zooms in on his mouth and his tongue getting ripped out.
Yeah.
Is cheesy. Like, and not good cheesy. Like,
right.
Bad cheesy. Like, it was, I appreciated the twist of the dad being dead and being a puppet.
Yeah.
But other than that, I hated this ending. Absolutely hated it.
Yeah. So on that note, let's talk about our scores.
Yeah. What you got for Nightlight?
Well, we do jump score first.
Oh, well, what do you have for jump score?
3.
3. Okay.
What'd you give it?
4.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple good jump scares. And the thing that I appreciate, especially in this era too, is none of them were like cheap. Like none of them were like the cat jumping on the piano to scare you.
Yeah.
Like all of the jump scares were scary things, which I really appreciate. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What'd you put for a Nightlight?
4. There's some good imagery there. Dolls are inherently creepy. Like you don't need to make a horror movie to have me creeped out by a ventriloquist dummy, and Mary Shaw's makeup was pretty good. Some of the effects of the victims weren't bad. Honestly, probably the scene that made me the most uncomfortable was the dead Mary Shaw, like her corpse in the flashback.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I put 4. Like, there's some good imagery, but there's really nothing that's going to bother you for an extended period of time. It's just going to fizzle out.
Yeah, I gave it a 2
Yeah.
for that. And what was your horror buff?
I'm at a good 5 with this one. It is what it is. It is a Christmas Hallmark movie. It's bad. It's bad. But if you're into the genre, you can sit back and turn off your brain for a while and enjoy the ride because there's like comfort in that kind of predictability.
Mm-hmm.
So,
totally.
yeah.
That's why I gave it a 2 for Scaredy Cat, because I didn't really hang on to this. I wasn't scared after, anything like that.
Not at all.
But I did give it a 5 for Neophyte. I don't really care to watch it again, but like if you really loved this movie and wanted to watch it again, I'd be like, okay, fine.
Yeah. Yeah, there are benefits to watching it a second time because you really do get to appreciate those scenes a little more, but it really isn't worth it.
So our next movie, I think, is also written by Lee, The Invisible Man.
I think you might be right, actually.
Yeah, because I was looking at because I look up the credits, and so I looked up the writer, and I wanted to see what else he had done, particularly because he hated this one so much, and I'm pretty sure that was in his credits.
Yeah, The Invisible Man, great movie, like really good movie. When it first came out, I was not really all that interested in it, but it got some really good buzz, and then I saw it and it blew me away, and I'm very excited to watch it for the third time.
From what you've told me, I am not excited. I am scared.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're still listening and you're a regular listener, I'll just say this right up top, like trigger warning, abuse. It is very much about an abusive relationship, and I almost, now that I'm thinking about it, I almost feel guilty for sounding excited about watching it again because it is kind of heavy and it's hard to watch sometimes, but it's art. It's very well done, and it's a great movie. But if that's something that you have issues with, it definitely might be a good episode of ours and a good movie to avoid.
Well, I'm not happy we're going back to heavy horror, but oh well, here we are.
You'll get a nice reprieve. What are we doing after that?
After that, we're doing weekly episodes for the month of October.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, like, all of our October movies are fun, right?
Yes.
Why don't you tell them what we're doing for October, too?
Okay, so for October, we are going to start, like I said, we're going to do weekly episodes because it's Halloween. So we're going to start with the new Hocus Pocus, which obviously will not be scary, but will be amazing. Followed by Scream 2.
Our first sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then The Witch, which I'm very afraid to watch.
I think you're going to really hate The Witch, and not because it's too scary, but because they all speak Old English and it's fucking exhausting.
Oh, that's fun though.
It's a great movie though.
And then on the 27th, we're going to do the original Halloween.
Yeah. That's one we kind of wanted to save for like a milestone, so it's, our second Halloween, right around the 1-year anniversary of our podcast. Yeah. We get to dive into a classic that I haven't seen in like 20 years. Like I haven't seen the original Halloween in a very long time. Yeah.
I'm scared.
It's going to be awesome.
Well, thanks for listening to Go a Little Mad. Please be sure to follow or subscribe to us on your favorite pod platform and like us on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok at Go a Little Mad Pod. Visit goalittlemadpod.com to continue the conversation about each episode. And you can help us spread the word with a quick review and 5-star rating, or grab some merch from our TeePublic site. Your sharing makes all the difference.
Smash that like and subscribe button, bro. Smash it.